Welcome to another episode of the Intentional Health for Women podcast. I'm your host, Garrett GQ Query, and I am joined today by a longtime friend, mentor, and honestly, probably one of the biggest pieces of why I am the coach that I am today. Welcome, Luke.
Hello. What's up?
What up, dude?
Garrett?
How you doing, man?
I'm good.
You've been in the States for how long now?
Oh, God. I don't know. 5 weeks?
5 weeks?
5 weeks. Yeah.
Good to be back.
It's good to be back.
Yeah.
It's good to be home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had some Texas barbecue.
Had lots of Texas barbecue. That's it, man.
Yeah.
That's what I miss the most, being
I
overseas.
bet. Spent some time in Florida.
Yep.
When do you go back?
I go back next week. Middle
Okay.
of next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Quick, like probably long, but yet quick, like too short at the same time.
Yeah, when you get over here and you're like, all right, I've got 6 weeks, and you think it's going to be like this long period of time, and it just goes by so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm ready to go home, see my wife and dogs.
I bet.
Yeah.
How many dogs do you have?
3.
3. And what kind of dogs?
I have an American Bulldog, I have a French Bulldog, and I have a Chihuahua. So we got the large, medium, and the small.
Yep. How big is Frank?
Frank is, I got to turn this into freedom units. He's 13 kilos. So that would be what? Yeah, he's about 30 pounds.
Okay. Yeah. Cause so my Frenchie, she turns 1 like next week and she's 15 pounds and
Yeah.
she won't we're guessing that by the time she's fully grown, she'll be like 16, 17 pounds.
Yeah.
She's a very petite Frenchie.
Yeah, Frank's a big boy. It's like I've given him D-ball or something. But he's like, when we got him, he's a Hungarian Frenchie.
Uh-huh.
And like his dad is massive.
Yeah.
Like looks like he's roided out.
Yeah.
So when we got him, we are like, okay, he's going to be a big boy. Now he's just this big, solid, furry potato.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually just got pictures of Nix's dad, and like the breeder was like, yeah, they give the males something. Cause he was just like,
Just staunch.
I was like,
Yeah.
what is going on? So as you know, women's health podcast, and we had a little bit of conversation over breakfast this morning and kind of got into, the first topic that I want to talk about is, evolution of women's training. Like you've been in the industry for 30 years.
Yeah, about
30 years. What did that look like? Like, what was that landscape when you first started?
Yeah. All right. So if we go, like I've been training since I was like 8. Right.
Mhm.
So growing up in Texas and Texas football, Friday Night Lights and all that, we all start young. Is where I'm from is a really small, like ranching community in the middle of nowhere. So that's basically all we have is like fighting, football, and the other F, which you can probably think of what that is. So, we had nothing to do but like train. So
Yeah.
we all got into it at very early. So when we were kids, and it's quite serious where I'm from as well.
Yeah.
But you didn't see a lot of women in gyms. And after high school, when I went to university, even going into the gyms there, you go to a university rec center, be a lot of women there. You didn't see them in the weight room though. They were doing cardio and playing tennis and racquetball and things like that. But now you go now, and women have it's become more and more accepted for women to be in the gym, and which is a fantastic thing.
Yeah.
But like I can remember the first big gym I went to, it was all dudes and maybe like 2 competitive bodybuilder women who were on enough gear to basically be another dude.
Yeah.
Right. But so it was a really taboo thing back then.
Mhm.
But now that it's become way more socially acceptable, it's a great thing. It's just a lot of stigmas and things that I think are still around of like women don't want to get bulky, and we're finally starting to get over that hurdle, which I think is great too. And women are starting to get more interested in not just worrying about what their bodies look like, but actually becoming strong.
Right.
Which is a big key to it.
Yeah. I mean, because I think it's like, to your point, that 2 women who were doing enough gear to basically be another man, like I think it perpetuated this thing that women thought that they would like walk into the gym and in a year they'd look like this Olympia competitor.
Yeah, like they'd wake up one day and go, oh my God, I took that workout too far yesterday. Like they're magically going to put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight.
Right.
And and that's a very real thing over the last few decades and people still think that that's what's going to happen, but that's not going to happen.
No.
And if you look at men, even men struggle to put on muscle.
Yeah.
Like you talk to any guy who's been in the gym a few years, like, okay, I put on a little bit of muscle at first, and then I've just been struggling to put on anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then they start taking PEDs to now start growing again.
Yeah.
So,
because it's like, I've been trying to get too big for 10 years and, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. And like we talked about too, like getting bigger isn't necessarily always a fun thing. Like you were telling me you're like, 240 now.
Yeah.
And now you're starting to feel it.
Yeah.
Like you're like, oh, things are getting difficult. And
Yes.
when I was still a competitive power lifter, at one point I was close to 270 pounds. Like everything gets really difficult the bigger you get.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's just like things you don't even expect. Like a lot of times when I'm eating my last meal, I sweat like eating my last meal of the day.
And you going into it going, do I really need this meal? I'm 750 calories short. Yeah. I'm going to have to eat it. I remember at one point I had an apartment that was on the third floor, and I had to go somewhere, and I walked down 3 flights of stairs and realized I left my car keys upstairs, and I'm looking at them going, I don't think I can actually go up and down the stairs again. And I had to call my roommate to throw my keys down to me. That's how bad it was. But man, I was strong. Holy smokes. I was massive.
Man, I was big.
I was big and strong, but good Lord, I couldn't walk 2 blocks without needing a post-workout drink.
So I have some opinions about this is like it, but from your perspective of, you've been in the industry for 30 years. At one point you did do some like small group women's coaching and stuff like that. What do you feel would be the ideal amount for a woman to train, just like Gen Pop, to be strong for her kids, be able to look good naked, wear a 2-piece swimming suit, etc. Like, what do you feel is kind of like that ideal spot for a woman to train?
Man, that's a big question. That's a big question.
Yeah.
That's a big loaded question because it realistically needs to fit into your lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's like if you look at a woman with kids, so we're assuming woman with a husband and kids and a career and all this other stuff. It's probably going to be better to talk about what's the minimal amount of stuff they need to do. Okay. And then what's the maximal stuff they can do. So, and this goes to any client you have, man, woman, doesn't matter. Right. Kids, no kids, career, no career. Right. You have a physiological limit of what's the maximum amount of stuff you can do right now while still being able to recover and have things be productive. And then you have a minimal amount of stimulus that you're going to need to actually see some results. Mm-hmm. And so you have this pretty broad range of what you could do, but then you got to throw life stuff in there as well, because you have to be able to manage that. You don't want especially for Gym Pop, you don't want your training and your nutrition to be like a part-time job, right? You're not a competitive bodybuilder. You don't need to go that hard.
No.
So you could make feasibly even 2 days a week would make a massive difference if you learned how to train hard.
Yes.
But that's the problem. People don't understand how hard they need to train, especially if they're doing a very minimalistic routine. And I would say for most people, 2 to 3 days, most women, 2 to 3 days going hard, full body workouts is probably going to be the number one thing they could possibly do. And then if you can fit more in, more is almost always better to a point.
Yeah.
And more gives you the leverage where you still have to train hard if you want to see results, but you may not have to train as hard.
Yep.
It's like if you're training twice a week and then you're like, okay, I think I could actually train 4 days a week.
Yep.
Okay. So instead of doing 2 days where you're having to give it 110%, you could probably go 4 days at 90%.
Right.
And you'd probably see better results doing it that way. But I think at the end of the day, the biggest factor here is learning how to actually train hard with enough sets to get you, enough top sets to get you where you need to be. Right.
I think that's a big thing, like a big learning curve for a lot of women is learning like what an actual top set looks like.
Yeah.
What does training really hard look like? When I was coaching in person, I had a girl who had favorable genetics and we put her at maintenance calories, had her in the gym 3 to 4 days on average. And she grew like an absolute dump truck, like no butt to like fat ass in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And because we taught her how to train.
Yeah.
and in like what that actually looks like. I think a big thing, like, to kind of circle back, and you know a lot about this, is like, I think there's like seasons of life too. A lot of people don't realize, like, one thing that I deal with a lot of moms is they find TikTok influencer Susie, who's 22, has zero responsibility. She trains 5 to 6 days a week. Her volume is through the roof because she hasn't learned how to train hard.
Yeah.
And they think that they can go do that program, and they try to make their lifestyle fit their program. Is like, kind of like unpack that. Like, what is that? Why is that not favorable? Because it's like we all go through seasons of life, and sometimes different seasons look different, right? Because like you've taught me this, is like, you basically have this big stress bucket and you can only handle so much. And like when you become a mom, career, wife, like your bucket's getting filled up by a lot of things. So like we have limited amount of space for gym stress, because it is a stress.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, why are you training?
Yeah.
That's the question you have to answer, right? Am I training because I want to do a bodybuilding show? Because that's going to look different than I'm training to allow that to carry over for the other stuff in my life, right? And that's, most gym pop are doing that. Right? If we're saying gen pop,
right,
we're saying they're going into the gym because they want to eliminate pain and discomfort. They might want to lose some body fat. They might want to shape their body with some muscle. They want to get a bit stronger. They want to feel more capable. They want to be more confident. You know, those are the things that most gen pop are going to want, which means they don't need to treat their training like a part-time job or a full-time job, right? It has to fit in with the lifestyle, or it's not going to be sustainable. And then depending, like looking at the strength bucket or the stress bucket, you have things that are going on inside of the gym, which are stressful. And then you have things going on outside of the gym, which are stressful. So the more your outside stress is, as it goes up, you have to make compensation somewhere else. So let's say you are training 4 days a week and you're training reasonably hard, and then shit goes sideways with your life. It doesn't make sense to keep training 4 days, even if you think like that's my stress outlet. No. That's compounding more stress, right? What you probably need to do is more meditation, journaling, stretching, like calming things down, because the shit's hit the fan outside of the gym. Going into the gym and throttling yourself is probably not going to be productive. So you have to ask yourself that question: is what I'm doing productive or not? Because I think people have a misconception that if you train and then you leave the gym, you're automatically going to get results. But that's not the case. If you train with too much volume, too much intensity, and you can't recover from that, you're actually going to get worse. It's not productive. So why spend all that time doing hard work if you're not getting something for it?
Yeah.
Right. That'd be like if you're taking a job, if you had you're not going to be a CEO and get paid minimum wage.
No,
that would make no sense. You're not going to work 100 hours a week for minimum wage. So like, why would you view the gym as any different and like train yourself like you're a CEO in the gym, but then you're not getting a return on your investment? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Right. So people need to pay more attention to that. Like if stress goes up outside of the gym needs to come down a little bit. If you go into situations where the stress outside the gym is really low, you have more opportunity to train hard. And looking at this seasonally, a lot of parents are going to have the same type of seasonal stuff, right? When the kids are in school, they may have a little bit more leeway to do stuff, especially like stay-at-home moms. That's going to be the time where they actually can train hard when the children are at school. Now, in the summertime, they might not be able to train that hard because the kids are home. They're spending time with the kids. They're doing activities, doing sports with the kids, chauffeuring the kids around. So it might be one of these things where we work hard in the first and second semester of school, and then we have program deloads and times of less training during the summer, and also like school holidays and things like that. But that's the importance as well of a coach helping them with understanding periodization and understanding how to program something that actually fits into their life. So it's like a little kid. You get all the little kids have that little board, and it has a star and a circle and a square, and they take the peg and they're trying to figure out which one it goes through. You don't want to get a circle and then take the square peg and start ramming it in there and just trying to make it work. And a lot of coaches will do that because if you look at a lot of coaches are young, they don't have kids. Like they don't understand that, you may be able to go in and train 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, because the only thing you do all day is train and eat and sleep and poop. A parent's not going to have that leverage, especially a mom.
Yeah. So many things. Yeah. I mean, I think it's super important to like realize that, right? Like stop trying to jam a square peg in a round hole. Like it just doesn't work. And like,
you can make it work.
You can make
but that
it
doesn't
work.
mean that's a good idea.
Right. What's the repercussions on the backside? Like what, like
you're no longer going to have a square peg. It's going to be square with rounded edges on it.
Because here's another great one that as we kind of transition into the stress conversation is you said this, and I don't know if you remember this or if it's something you've said more than once, is your body works like a credit card. Like you can run up a balance for a long time, but eventually you're going to have to pay it back, and you're going to have to pay it back with interest.
That's it.
And that's a great example of like, if we're looking at seasonality of life and, this mom, right, who maybe she used to be in really good shape. She used to train 5 to 6 days a week. She had the physique that she wanted to. And then career, husband, kids, training was pretty sporadic during that season. Things have quote unquote maybe settled down in her life. And she's like, well, this worked for me before. I can do that again. And it's kind of, that's a great example of like square peg, round hole. It's like, well, no, like your life looks nothing like it did 5-6 years ago. And I mean, you can make it work, but eventually you're going to have repercussions because like your stress bucket's overflowing.
Yeah.
So some of the things that I wanted to cover is like, in your experience over the years is like that example, right? Square peg, round hole, racking up a balance. How much does that impact someone's journey? Like how much of that, like over the years, like you've had clients come to you and you've had to help them pay off their debt.
Yeah.
What some of that look like over the years?
It's difficult too, because a lot of people aren't accepting of what needs to happen for them to basically get themselves out of this hole of debt. Right. So they come to you, I want to lose fat, but they've been starving themselves and they're locked into this. They think they're starving themselves. So locally, let's say locally is day to day, they might be starving themselves. But if we look at a global example of this, starving yourself Monday through Friday. And then on the weekends, you're basically in a surplus because you go crazy over the weekends.
Yeah.
Like that's a really common, like binging and purging type of activity you'll see people do. But in their mind, they think they're actually eating 1,200 calories.
Right.
Realistically, if we play the law of averages, they're eating like 3,000 calories.
Yep.
Right. So that first conversation is like, look, let's just track your food and I'm going to show you. And just if anything goes in your mouth that has calories, then I want you to track it. And then we go, okay, now you're right. Like Monday through Friday, you're actually eating in a pretty decent deficit. But then if we go Friday night through Sunday night, you're eating 3,000 calories a day. And now that you're basically eating at maintenance globally, but eating at maintenance daily would be a really good idea. But when you make these massive swings between starving yourself and then binging, that is not the same thing when we play law of averages. Law of averages, it basically dictates that we have a spread of calories that we're moving around, but you don't want that spread to be too aggressive.
Yeah.
So if your total daily energy intake is supposed to be 2,000 calories and you're eating 1,200 calories 5 days a week and you're eating 3,000 calories over the weekend, like that may actually calculate out to 2,000 calories daily. But physiologically, your body doesn't know where the hell you're at. So you're actually better off just eating at maintenance and eating 2,000 a day and go through this healing period to let your body find a set point and then working from there. But that's the problem, is there used to being a certain weight Monday through Friday, or not even taking their weight on a Monday, Tuesday, because they already know the weekend's going to make them heavier, and they don't like that metric of Earth's gravitational pull against their mass, because women tend to put a lot of worth in what the scale says, even though that doesn't dictate their self-worth or how they even look. Now, if we could take that weekend and spread those calories out through the whole week, yeah, you're probably going to weigh a little bit more every day, but at least your body can find some type of balance and some type of benchmark level that now we have a landing spot we can move from.
Yeah.
And then it's just, okay, do we need to eat more? Do we need to eat less? But the hardest thing I feel for most women is convincing them you need to eat more for a small period of time and just accept that you're not going to look the way you want to. Then when we're ready, we'll start chipping away some calories, adding some exercise, and we'll slowly get you where you need to be, but in a manner that's more logical and more physiologically relevant than what you were doing before. And you train basically mostly women, right?
Yeah.
And you've had these conversations and they're like, I'm all in. I'm all in. The first 1.5 pounds they put on the scale, they lose their shit. They buy a ticket to the crazy train and you're trying to talk them out of getting on the train. They're like, look, no, remember I told you this is normal. Yep. Like you were going to put on a little bit of weight, but look, you don't look any different. You don't look any different, right? And a lot of women, in order to get their bodies where they want to be, women want to build big booties, right? They want to be, back in the day, it was like they wanted Madonna arms. That's something my mom would say, Madonna arms, or they wanted shoulders and arms and like a tiny waist, but they didn't want a big butt. Now it's all about the butts. Yeah. Right. Well, if you want a big butt, there's only two ways to do it. You either build muscle or you get fat. Yeah. That's your two options. And the only way you're going to build glutes is if you don't diet and you eat to support glute development. Right. Which means, you're going to have to weigh a little more because muscle carries weight. Yeah. But that's the thing. That's the biggest thing. The nutrition, I find that the training is actually far easier to get women to understand how hard they need to train. Yeah. But it's eating to support that where we have the issue, because over the decades, the commercialism has told them they need to look a certain way to fit in a certain size dress. And they want the dress size to go down, not up. But it's
even a weight. Like a lot of times, like there's this like like this magical number, right? Like every woman's supposed to weigh 120 pounds. Yeah. And it's like, after coaching for a decade, like I can count on one hand how many clients, and mind you, these are very small human beings, like short, that can fit within the parameters of being healthy. Yeah. Have the physique that they want, that are 120 or under.
The parameters of socially acceptable healthy weight. Yeah. Right. So it's like, if you're 5'3", then 120 pounds is pretty good. But if you're 5'10", 120 pounds does not look the same. Yeah. So it's like should be different standards and not a certain acceptable gravitational pull, depending on how tall or short you are.
Because like, I mean, even 5'6", like 120 ain't going to look that great.
I mean, you're
gonna be pretty rough.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like we need to have more people talking about having these types of conversations, and we need more people listening. Yeah. It's like, look, do you want to like my mom's generation was all about, being really skinny, like having no muscle, basically just being skinny and being skinny fat. Yeah. Right. Nowadays, women do want to be shapely, and they're understanding that muscle is the key to looking shapely. Now, the problem is we have to feed to get to that point, right? You can't just lift and just manifest your destiny of having a big ass, like a big, round, voluptuous, nice, bouncy ass. You got to use calories and protein to get there. Right. And so in a lot of cases, what we tend to do is I'll say, all right, here's where I want you. But I give you a good example, Allie. Yeah. Right. So when I started training Allie, she's eating like 1,100, 1,200 calories, and she was skinny fat, and she wanted to look like Dana Lynn Bailey. Yeah. I said, okay, if you want to we're going to have to eat more calories, and you're just going to have to accept that your weight's going to go up. Yep. Right. So I put her on 1,800 calories, and she's like, all in.
To put this in perspective, Allie is 5'2". Yep.
Yeah. And so I put her on 1,800 calories, and she gains like 1.5 pounds, loses her mind. I'm like, okay, go back to 1,200. She went back to 1,200. Okay. Are you good? We stable, right? Okay. Take her back to 1,800, puts on 1.5 pounds, loses her mind. I'm like, all right. So this is not working. So I'm like, all right, let's get 1,200. Now let's go to 1,300. When you get comfortable with that, we'll go to 1,400. So we basically had to reverse out of this. And then if she started gaining too much, she wasn't comfortable with it, we brought it back down 100 calories till she was comfortable with it.
Yep.
And at one point I've had her actually at 65 kilos, like smashing food. And we found a weight that was too much on that top end. And then we back off. And the goal was like, let's see how far we can go up. Like if we get to like 60 kilos, 132 pounds.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, she didn't feel comfortable. Let's take it back down to 60 where you felt okay. Now can we get to 63 before you freak out? And at one point I got her to 65 and she freaked out and we bring her back down.
Mm-hmm.
And it took 7 years to get her comfortable in her own skin to do what she needs to do to put on muscle and to find a physique she likes. Once she achieved the Dana Lynn Bailey physique, then she calls me, she goes, I want to be more compact. And I go, what the fuck does that mean? Okay, I get it. You want to be like shreddy and like small. She goes, yeah. So then we got her down to like, say 55. And like, this is like the ideal weight for her is like, she looks good. She feels good. It's sustainable. And so that's what we settled on, which 55 is about 121 pounds.
Yeah.
So for 5'2", 121, she's got abs. She's got veins in her abs. Like she enjoys it. It's not hard for her to do. And she can eat tons of carbs and she can eat 1,800 to 2,000 calories and she can maintain her weight. But it takes a long time to deprogram people from, especially women, from what they think they need to do and what's going to keep them where they want to be versus what actually needs to happen.
Yeah, I can relate to that. So when I finally like started taking thyroid replacement therapy because my thyroid was messed up, dieted down this year and I got to 224 and started to increase my food to like find maintenance calories. And one weekend I underate. And I was like, I woke up the next morning and I could just like, I woke up and I like looked in the mirror and I was like, why am I like shredded again? And stepped on the scale. In one weekend of under eating, like I dropped 6 pounds in like a weekend. I was like, I had never had that problem, right? Like I had never been able to get my body to that point of being that like metabolically flexible and that sensitive to, oh, I didn't eat enough over the weekend and I dropped 6 pounds.
Yeah.
Like it was the weirdest thing in the world. What over the, like to kind of transition from that, and I feel like this might have been a conversation, and I don't even know, that you've probably had with Allie over the years, is like so many people think of training as therapy. Oh, this is my therapy.
Ugh.
And like you were one of the first people, like one of the first mentors who brought it up. Like you talked about like, you know, going through therapy yourself, going through EMDR, having some of your staff go through EMDR, like when like, and I think it's becoming more prevalent in our industry now of like coaches recognizing that and making that judgment call of like, hey, like we're doing a really great job. We've done a lot, but like there's some things standing in our way and it's out of my scope of practice. You need to go. Have you gone to see someone?
Yeah. Yeah. So we used to teach a course, I'd love to bring this back, called When It's Not About the Food. And so it's basically when your diet's good, your training's good, everything outside of the gym is good, your lifestyle's good, recovery is good, but you're still not seeing the results you should, or you're self-sabotaging. Okay, well, if the diet and the training and the lifestyle is not working, and you're self-sabotaging, what is the likely culprit? You probably have some unprocessed baggage, some type of early childhood trauma or adult trauma that's now creating a trauma loop and a self-sabotage loop.
Yep.
And I think more coaches need to recognize this for what it is, because you work with 100 people and you get really good results with 30, you get decent results with 70, but there's some type of roadblock that's preventing them from moving ahead. And then you start, like, you know how it is when you're training people, especially one-on-one, they tell you all kinds of shit that because they trust you, that they probably shouldn't be telling you, talking about their husband, their kids, their wife, their boss, their job. And they tell you like a lot of stuff that they should probably be talking to a therapist about. It's like, okay, so, and then you see a pattern of this thing where they're pretty good most of the week. And then the fucking wheels come off the bus and they drive off the road, right? If that's happening, there's no amount of personal training or coaching that's going to help that.
Yeah.
Like we can give you all kinds of strategies, but if you're consistently stepping on your own feet, it's time to refer out. So you have to look at that and talk to the client about, look, I think there might be something going on, some baggage or something that you're not recognizing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not qualified to actually deal with.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can get you. Are you open if I get your referral to going and talking to somebody about this? Because I think it'll be massively helpful. Mm-hmm. And you're going to get one of two responses. One is, I think you're right. Okay. Who do you recommend? The other one is, what the fuck are you talking about? I'm not fucking crazy. Mm-hmm. Like, no. I'm not talking. I'm just talking about a lifetime accumulation of traumatic events that are now stuck in the front of your brain subconsciously. Yep. That's creating this pattern of you doing dumb shit to yourself and you don't even realize it's happening. Mm-hmm. Right. And everybody's got it. Training can be just as addictive as drugs.
Yeah.
So you'll see people that want to train more and more and more, or even dieting. Getting into deficit could be an addictive thing for you. They like that feeling of being hungry and miserable. Yeah. Or people that overeat and use that, or people that use cocaine or hookers or whatever, right. Booze. All of this stuff, and procrastination can be an addiction. Mm-hmm. So if you're seeing this type of thing, it's like, all right, everybody has their own vices. Everybody has their own trauma. I hate the phrase first world problems, mm-hmm. but it is true. Like people will go, well, I live in America, or I live in Australia, or I live whatever in a very well-developed country. And yep. I have, I don't have anything that I should be, at least I'm not like a starving kid in the middle of Africa, right? Things could be worse. You're right. Things could be worse, but you shouldn't use third world issues to negate your first world issues.
Right.
Because at the root of everything, your brain only recognizes, do I feel safe or do I feel threatened? Yep. It's like an on-off switch. Yep. So those first world problems could be something that your parents said to you when you were a little kid. Mm-hmm. And now that got locked into your brain. And then every time you start to get success, you might not feel that you're worth having that success. And then you self-sabotage.
Yeah.
And it could be as simple as cheating on your diet, cheating on your workouts, cheating on your partner, cheating on your job. You get locked in these patterns.
Because it's all relative, right? Like
it's all relative.
Sitting there and saying, first world problems, well, yeah, but like that person in the third world, they don't even have access to your problems, but that doesn't diminish that it is a problem for you.
And it's all relative. Like your problems are your problems, and you can get the same hormonal and also the same nervous system response to a first world problem as you're going to get with a third world problem.
Yeah.
Right. Because your brain doesn't disassociate those two things. Your thinking brain does. Like you consciously mm-hmm. understand the difference of, well, at least I don't live in Ukraine and I'm not dealing with the Ukrainian-Russian war.
Yeah.
But you've got your own battles that you're dealing with your children, with your partner, with your job, with stuff that happened in your childhood that you never addressed, right? So people need to understand this and stop living in denial and say, okay, maybe I go and I do a session or 2 or 3 with a qualified trauma counselor mm-hmm. just to see if it works.
Yep.
Because look, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. But what's the hurt of just going and giving it a shot? Even if it's uncomfortable to talk about that stuff, you're willing to talk to your coach about it, who's not qualified to do this. Maybe you go talk to a professional who actually understands the brain and the physiology behind it and can help you unpack this stuff so that you don't continue to subconsciously self-sabotage. Yeah. When we started doing that course, we told people, like, get aligned with, we're telling all the coaches, get aligned with a good qualified therapist and make that part of the deal. And probably the most successful student of mine that has done this is a man named Juggy. Juggy is the Indian body coach. He's in the UK. Yep. He only trains Indians. If you're white, he doesn't train you. If you're black, he only trains Indians. That's his niche.
Yeah.
He's Indian. He understands the culture. He understands religious things, ideologies. He understands how Indians think. Mm-hmm. He went home, and the first thing he did was he went and did counseling himself and found a really good trauma counselor, and he rolled the price of the first session in with their package. So when you sign up for him, you get one session with the trauma counselor that's all you've already paid for. It's part of your package. And if you decide you want to continue, then you work that out with the counselor. And he called me and says, this is the best results I've ever seen, because we have all these people who would never take the initiative to go talk to a counselor. They now go because it's free. They've already paid for it. And most of them will stay on, and we see the best results because now they can get out of their own way.
Yep.
But people need the initiative. They need a reason why they need to go.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
Because coming from the Midwest, like you spoke about me like in the nutrition certification, right? Like, and there's a lot of my family that still struggles with it.
Yeah.
And like, we talked a lot about
with losing weight. Yeah.
Yeah. With losing weight and identity, right? Like, it's so hard sometimes for me to go home because I can get sucked back into that identity, especially because majority of the time when I go home, well, all the time I go home, I stay with my sister. Like my sister's the one with the house. And, you know, when I go home, I stay with her, and she still identifies with that lifestyle. And it's super easy to just slip and fall right back into those patterns of what made me 400 pounds at one point.
Yeah.
You know, all of the snacks around the house that like, I don't keep that stuff in my house. Like it's just, I don't have access to it. Like I have to be very intentional and go out and find snacks if I want them. So it's super easy to fall into that. I think that's what a lot of people deal with. Like that's one of the number one things that I would have to say that I deal with women is, especially as we approach the holiday season, is this identity of, oh, it's the holidays, I have to eat this way. Or I'm going to be looked at as the black sheep or oddball out in the family.
And you'll be guilted into eating the stuff too. Like, oh, you can why don't you just have a little bit? It's not going to kill you. It's not going to kill you. But that could be a trigger for you where you can't stop.
No.
It's the same thing at my house. Like I've had addictions with things like, you know, booze. Like that was a big one for me. Booze and sex as well. Like when I was in my 20s. And so I don't keep booze in the house. I don't keep booze in the house. And a lot of it is when I get stressed, that's how I self-medicate.
Yep.
I've never been one to self-medicate with food. I don't self-medicate with sugar and like high sugar, high fat things. It's always been booze. So I just don't keep it in the house because chances are if I'm sitting there and I'm like, I'm really stressed out, like, man, a glass of wine would be really nice right now. I know that if I drink a glass of wine, I'm drinking 2 bottles.
Yeah.
And if I have to actually leave to go get it, I'm probably not going to do it. So I just don't keep it in the house. And my wife doesn't really drink. Yep. So my wife will drink like 2 drinks a year. So it's great. We don't have to keep booze in the house.
Yeah.
And she keeps sugary stuff, but I'm not.
You don't struggle with that.
I don't. I've never been a people. I go out to eat with people and like, you want a dessert? I'm like, no, if I have a dessert, I'll have another steak. Like I'll have steak for dessert and a potato, right? It's like, I've never been a sweets guy unless I'm massively stressed out.
Right.
But if that's the case, then, you know, there's supplementation I can use and maybe go out and do 20 minutes on the cross trainer or something like that. And a lot of that stuff will go away. But it's hard too, because when you have those addictions, there's that voice in the back of your head going, come on, eat it, eat it, eat it. And you have to get really staunch with telling yourself no. And that's another thing, like you said, like you go back with your family and it's socially acceptable. Do you get to get pulled into that because everybody else is doing it? So you have to learn how to be really solid with not only telling other people no, but telling yourself no. And you have to be okay with the stigma around that because people are going to try to convince you because they're doing it and they don't want to feel bad because they're locked in that. They want to partner. Like there's when I was growing up in my 20s, no one did drugs alone. We always did drugs with people we thought were our friends.
Yeah.
And then the minute you stop doing drugs, guess what?
They're not your friends
anymore because they want to hang out with other people. So you can't be sober with people doing drugs because then you look like the freak.
Right.
Now replace drugs with food.
Exactly.
Or booze or whatever.
Yeah.
But
100%.
Like with you, you always have to look at things from a nature versus nurture perspective, right? So when I talk to people that grew up and all their family's overweight, now we have to have a talk of, well, is this nature versus nurture? Because they'll think I can't lose weight because it's genetic. My parents are overweight, my siblings are overweight, everybody in my family. Well, okay, let's investigate what foods you had growing up. Like my mom always cooked dinner. We always had a home cooked meal.
Same.
We had Cokes in the house, but we were only allowed one Coke a day.
Yep.
We had sweets in the house. We were allowed like one Little Debbie a day. And then if
Mhm.
we snuck another one, we get in trouble,
Yep.
right? So that's a nurture thing. Now, if you grew up in a house where your parents didn't cook and it was always McDonald's, Burger King, or like sweets or frozen meals, that could be a nurture thing. You might just be programmed. You might be overweight because you're programmed to eat that stuff and you never learned how to cook and you never had home cooked meals. But then on the other side, there could actually be a genetic thing, right? We know there's genetic issues with fat storage, fat mobilization, fat oxidation, hunger cues. That's why a lot of the GLP-1 agonists right now are really good, because it kills people's appetite because they may have some type of genetic polymorphism where they don't actually have hunger and satiety cues.
Yep.
They don't recognize it. Or they may be past that point where they're so overweight that the hormones that are supposed to be working to keep them satiated, the receptors are now desensitized, so they can eat and eat and eat, and they never feel like they've even touched the sides of their stomachs. Yeah. So you have both of these things you're dealing with. So
well, yeah, because I don't know, did I ever tell you this? So when I lost 70 pounds naturally right out of high school, and was like under 300 pounds for the first time at that point in 4 years. Cause like I walked into high school 310 pounds. And something happened. Like I was working with a coach, couldn't afford them anymore, gained back 20, but maintained that. And I had a lot more muscle at that point than I had ever had. So I was still in decent shape.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, my mom passed away. I gained all of it back plus more and hit 380 pounds. And at the height of it, like I would get 2 McGriddles, 2 hash browns, a large orange juice on the way to work. On my first 15-minute break, 2.5 hours after getting to work, like I would typically have a couple of candy bars, a bag of chips, and a Coke. Go on my 30-minute lunch to Little Caesars, order an entire large pizza, crazy breads, and a 2-liter Coke. I would eat it all and smash half the 2 liter of Coke. And then a lot of times on my second 15-minute break, I'd go have like another candy bar, another bag of chips, and another soda, and go home, cook a couple pounds of pasta, ground beef, and whatever, and like have dinner.
Yeah. So you're using a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like all of that. And like, and to your point of like feeling full, like my body at that point was completely dysregulated.
Yeah.
Like I would kind of reach fullness, but like not really.
One of the things is like you were young, like you lost a parent at an age where that shouldn't have happened. And like you're expecting that to happen when you're an old man.
Yeah.
And your parents are really old.
Yeah.
Right. So when that happens, it's like that happened too early, and it's easy to use food or drugs or what, replace that with any addiction you want as a coping mechanism. Yeah. There was a book I read in my 20s. Bob Paris, I think is who it was.
Okay.
And he was a bodybuilder, and he wrote a book called Gorilla Suit. And it talks about basically him being, I think he was bullied, or I cannot remember because it's been decades since I read it, but he used bodybuilding to put on the gorilla suit so that people wouldn't mess with him anymore. Yep. Right. And so that's you could look at that food. You lost a parent too early, and now you're feeling very vulnerable. You're feeling lost. You're feeling like, why did this happen to me? So then you find the comfort in the food, and then and then it gets out of control, and you don't really recognize it because your brain's trying to protect you from feeling the grief of this and of the loss. And then you wake up months later and you're like, oh my God, I've put 80 pounds on.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
Well, you were blinded by your brain basically telling you, don't worry, we'll get through this. Let's use this food as a shield to shield you from the trauma and the grief of what you just dealt with.
That's a great transition to kind of almost like wrap out the gym isn't therapy.
No, it can be I'm not going to deny it can be therapeutic.
Yes.
But it is only one part of a comprehensive healing process, right? Just like anything else, medication. If you get put on a medication, like I'm not a big proponent of SSRIs, SNRIs, like they have their time and place.
Yes.
Or even things like taking a statin. Like people take a statin okay, I'm not opposed to that.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm opposed at is being on the statin and not getting your shit together and trying to do what you need to do to get off the statin.
Yeah.
Like that's going to be a part of my talk on Friday at Silverback is we need to stop. TRT is not the panacea that you think it is.
No.
It is not the thing that's going to fix you.
Nope.
Because if you have low T, and there's a lot of reasons, like I'm almost 47, and I've had low T since I was 36. And part of that was because I was taking gear for powerlifting competitions, bodybuilding, strongman, all that. But the one thing for men is that you're going to age and your testosterone is going to lower. So when you supplement with TRT, it's going to offset the aging issue. If you're a woman and your estrogen's crashing, your progesterone's crashing, HRT is going to be massively helpful, but it's not going to fix everything.
No.
And
you have to meet it halfway.
Yeah, it's going to be pointless without the lifestyle stuff.
Yes.
Because if you look at, I remember it's like 10 years ago or something, I was watching TV and America's like one of the only countries in the world where you can advertise for pharmaceuticals. And also in one commercial break, you're going to see an advertisement for a pharmaceutical, and the next commercial is going to be an advertisement for a class action lawsuit based on people who got screwed up from that pharmaceutical.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's the only country where I'd ever see that happen. So all the TRT clinics started popping up, and there was a class action lawsuit of, did you get placed on testosterone replacement therapy and then you had a stroke or a heart attack? So they were trying to associate TRT with giving you a heart attack or giving you a stroke. But that wasn't really the case. What it was is people were going in to get the testosterone because of low testosterone because of the lifestyle stuff that was going to give them a heart attack or stroke eventually anyways. And they thought taking the testosterone was going to fix that, but it's not.
No,
it's just going to give you a false sense of security. If you have dyslipidemia and you get on a statin, if you have high blood pressure and you get on blood pressure medications, those are good things to take to give you the time to get your lifestyle stuff in order, because you could get on a statin that's not going to prevent you from having a heart attack, not in the long term.
No.
Right. So I think that people need to understand, the going to the gym for therapy is a good thing. But if you're not also cleaning up your diet, cleaning up your lifestyle, getting more sleep, working on stress management, seeing a counselor, there's a lot of stuff that comes with that to it's something that's actually going to have a therapeutic effect. And counseling is part of that.
Exactly. Because I feel like something that I've recognized over the last couple of years is a training session typically makes my day better.
Yeah.
And I feel like some people associate, well, that's therapy. It's it's not. If I have a stressful day and I go smash a workout, I'm going to come out with probably a more positive outlook on my day in general.
Yeah.
But did that fix the wounded child inside of me? No.
It's a rob Peter to pay Paul mentality.
Yeah.
You're getting a few hours of feeling good, but you still have 20 hours of feeling like a bag of dicks. Yeah. Or if we're talking to women, a bag of ovaries.
Yeah.
Right. It's like what are you going to, you can't train 5 times a day to try to make yourself feel better all the time.
Right.
Right. So it's if you go to the gym and that makes you feel better, the gym should always make you feel better.
Yeah.
But if it's making you feel better to the point where you feel like that's therapy, then you probably actually need professional therapy.
Yeah.
Period. And I always tell people, what's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is you don't see inherent value from it. You didn't get it. Okay. But at least you gave it a shot.
Right.
Right. I teach a lot of people how to do Olympic weightlifting, which is probably the scariest type of barbell sport you could ever do.
Yep.
You're moving heavy weight really fast and trying to stay in position. And you do have the, slight risk of dropping a barbell on your head. Yeah. And there's a lot of fear with people when they're trying to learn to lift. And look, what at the weight you're pulling right now, what's the worst thing that could happen? They go, I just dropped the bar. Yeah. Okay. That's the worst thing is you just don't complete the lift.
Mm-hmm.
That's the worst. So why not just do it correctly?
Yeah.
Right. So it's if you're I don't want to go to counseling, only crazy people go to counseling. No, a lot of high achievers and people go to counseling. It's what's the worst that could happen? You didn't like it? Cool. Try a different counselor. You do a couple of different sessions. Didn't work for you? Cool. Let's find something else that's actually going to work.
100%. How important is it to have like a purpose in your training journey? Like we see so many of these businesses that are built on the back of 12-week transformations, but then the question becomes, then what?
That's it. Okay. I don't have a problem with 12-week transformation as long as you're not doing anything, as long as you're not teaching people the wrong way of doing things.
Yes.
And that's a lot of times you get to the point where if you have like a big payoff at the end, like you'll say $5,000 12-week transformation, sometimes that'll make people do a lot of the wrong things. Short term, the right things to win $5,000, but long term, the wrong things. And they get a misconstrued idea of what you actually should be doing.
Yeah.
Right. And what you can actually do for 12 months, not just 12 weeks.
Right.
So I don't actually have a problem with these types of transformations because they give you a start and an end date. And it teaches people that if you can do a concentrated amount of work and stay on track in a 12-week period, you can radically transform your body.
Yes.
But it's right. Like what's next? So if somebody comes to train with me and it's like, okay, I give them, this is what we're going to do. Your goal is going to take 6 months. Immediately, I'm going to go, well, once that's done, what do you want to do next? Because if you don't have another goal at the end of that 6 months, you're likely to backslide and destroy all the good work you did in that last 6 months.
Yeah.
So there should always be something else. And people need to stop saying, again, something I'm going to talk about on Friday is, doctors need to stop telling people that they need to diet and exercise because that doesn't mean anything. What the fuck does diet and exercise mean? So if I tell you, I need you to diet. So what, 50% deficit on a carnivore, or do I do vegan, or do I do paleo, or fuck that? It's very generalized, ambiguous. It means absolutely nothing. I could tell you to diet and you just starve yourself and go on a 40-day Jesus fast, right?
Yeah.
That's not going to be really helpful.
No.
If I go exercise, that doesn't mean it. Do you lift weights? Do you go run a marathon? Do you go do body combat? Like, what do you do? Like, we need to get more, we need to stop saying go exercise and tell people you need to go train. And the difference between exercise and training is training has a direct purpose that has an end goal.
Yeah.
If you tell people just exercise, if they miss a session, it's not a big deal to them. When they go to the gym, they have no direction. They just flounder around and do stuff that's not actually going to move them towards their goal.
Right.
So people need to have a purpose for what they're doing so that they have a clearly defined strategy. And that's the importance of having a coach, is the coach is going to outline. When you're a coach, your job is basically to be an architect. So I need to do a survey of what's going on, and I need to make blueprints of what we're going to do. And then I need to make the strategy of what do we do first? If you're an architect and you built a house, what are you going to build first when you're building the physical house?
The foundation.
Yeah. You have to pour the concrete. You have to level out the ground and pour the concrete. And then you got to put up the frame. And then you put the roof on. And then you put the walls up and you put the shingles on the roof. Like, there's a logical way that a house has to be built. And then you have to know what's load bearing, what's not, where the electricity goes and the plumbing goes. Like, there's a lot of design and a lot of initial planning that goes into building a house or a structure or a building or whatever. The same thing happens with a coach. If I'm an expert, which a lot of people consider me an expert in program design, there's a lot of stuff you need to do with assessing and decisions that need to be made, and then a logical sequence of how we're going to do things. And then my second job is as the project manager. My job is to tell you how to get it done and to delegate the work to you. So the client in this situation, that's the workers. The people are going to pour the foundation, put up the frame, put up the walls and all that, right? So that's how this has to go. But if they don't have clearly defined goals, then there's no structure or strategy. They're just basically floundering around the gym doing whatever machine is open without any insight of what they should be doing to get to their goals. And then they get upset because they're not getting there and they stop going to the gym.
Right.
I went to the gym. I didn't like it. I didn't see anything. Nothing happened. Well, you didn't have a fucking plan.
Yeah.
Like, would you take a road trip without GPS?
Nope.
No. Would you go on a road trip with a car that's not going to make it the whole way?
No.
Of course not. Right. So you need someone to fix the car and to actually design where you're going to go.
Yeah. And so, like, yeah, setting goals, setting places you want to go. And like, there can be, like you said, There can be a running goal, a powerlifting goal. Yep. It can be, I want to get ready for a photo shoot if you're more physique driven, right? Like there can be so many different set points that we can find, like as far as goals to reach. And then it provides like there's a purpose, but like, and we talked a little bit about this is, you know, before it's like, I want to be a husband and I want to be a father, right? Like I made a decision at the beginning of this last year that I want to do my first bodybuilding show. And I told my coach, I was like, it's my first and only, like, we're going to go do this, but like, I have other life goals that are going to supersede that because I understand what that lifestyle takes. And so now we're like, but we're building that foundation. We're building that runway to go do it. And then like the goals will transition into to something different.
Yeah.
So like super important to have those things.
I think one last thing on that is not just goals and purpose in the gym, but also outside of the gym too. Because if you look into the literature as well, the people who live the longest and also live, and I want to be clear, live the longest, not waiting to die. Those are two different. You could live a long time, but you're not really living. You're just, God, please take me, you know. If you want to live productively, you need to have a reason for living. Yeah. And so you see this a lot with parents. Like you go, well, what's your purpose? Oh, to take my kids and turn them into really good adults. Like, no, that's your job. That's not really your purpose. You need to have, what's your purpose? Right. Not your partner's purpose, your kid's purpose. What is your purpose? And a lot of people go through life without any purpose. It just makes them angry, bitter people that yell at the TV or yell at the moon or whatever. Yeah. You need to have a reason for what you're doing and also a positive outlook. If you look in our literature, people who maintain a positive outlook on life and have a life purpose tend to live 7 to 9 years longer than people that don't. And they tend to be like age-related disease free, pain and discomfort free. Like there's a much higher potential for you to actually live when you're elderly and not die of some age-related disease or be a miserable. I'm not going to say it. It's a word that is not a bad word in Australia, but is a really bad word here. Miserable person. We'll just say that.
I've had because my parents had me so young, I've had a very unique perception of this. One of my grandfathers, you know, may he rest in peace, was an amazing man. But for the last 10 years of his life, he had given up and he was just waiting. Like to him, he seemingly had fulfilled his purpose and he lacked purpose moving forward. And it made him like, thankfully he never got to the point of being angry and bitter, but like, he just didn't like, I begged him to go hunting and he wouldn't do it. Like he had become ashamed. And like, to your point of like living longer, like one of my grandmas is miserable and intolerable to be around. And one of my grandmas is like an absolute like delight to be around and lives a very fulfilling life, like volunteers, like she's going to outlive them all. Like she's going to be the one that makes it to like 95, which is still 20 years away. Yeah.
You see it a lot too. Like people retire and now they have nothing and they age rapidly and they
get a bunch of diseases.
They get they're not sharp mentally anymore. Yep. They don't continue learning and trying new things and basically they're just waiting to die, which is crazy to me. Like, you think about all the people you know that are in their 80s and 90s and they're still sharp as a tack. Yeah. They're still finding things to do. They might be retired, but they're not really retired because they find other things to occupy their time and they still have a schedule and appointments and stuff that they do. They're still learning things. They're still basically working their mind. And that's something we need to get better at too, is not just working our peripheral system and working the muscle. We got to keep working your brain. Because I tell you what, younger people especially don't think about this. If you don't continue to work your brain, you're just going to be a really hypertrophied, shredded dumbass when you get older. Like we're all going to fall. We're all going to turn into wrinkled, tiny old people at some point.
Yeah.
Your brain is all you got at that point. So you
Right.
want to try to keep that thing as fresh as possible.
Yeah. So how I wrap up my podcast now, with the business name, with the podcast name is, in this season of your life, how are you living intentionally?
Oh, for myself?
Yeah.
How am I living intentionally? God, Jesus. I wish you had, instead of springing that on me. Yeah, look, I think every day I live with the intention of trying to make other people better.
Yeah.
Like trying to give people values and purpose for becoming better, doing better, and trying to maintain positivity in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in our industry where it's easy to get locked into dumb shit. It's easy to get locked into our egos. It's easy to get locked into selfishness and not basically trading your morals for money and status and things like that. I think people need to spend more time being selfless, but not to the point of being altruistic.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't set yourself on fire for other people, but you still should be doing a lot of things of how is what I do and how I speak to somebody and how I teach somebody, how is that going to have a butterfly effect to hundreds of thousands of other people?
Yeah.
Because I'm in that unique position where as an educator, and somebody's been in the industry so long, I have a massive influence on thousands of coaches who are going to deal with thousands of clients in their lifetime.
Right.
So I always have to be very cognizant of doing the right thing, saying the right thing, teaching the right thing, because it doesn't just affect that person. It affects everyone that they come into contact with for the rest of their life.
Yep.
So my intent and purpose is to try to make things better and change things so that I can die knowing that I've affected positively as many people as I possibly could.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on
Thanks for having me.
from the other side of the world.
Yeah. Boy,